We have Sean Rose. A lot of things happening. The budget debate, I think, is still in progress.
That's right.
And there's a lot of things going on in the country. It was Farmers Week over the weekend. You got the signing of the cruise fare agreement. There's a host of things going on, accidents on scooters and boats, and lot happening this week, Sean. What's making the story? What's making the stories?
Greetings, Edrenka. An eventful weekend, and one can argue that on Monday, all eyes and even ears were tuned or turned to the House of Assembly, where many expected to hear a very robust discussion on the 2014 budget debate. However, the opposition, Virgin Islands Party, decided to boycott the budget debate, and we had a 3rd District Representative, Honorable Julian Fraser, turning up at the House of Assembly in an attempt to explain to the House what was his personal reason or reasons for not being able to give his take on the 2014 budget. Now, in his approach to doing so, he began by making, or at least alluding to, some aspects of the budget itself. And this caught the attention of House Speaker Honorable Moses Catliff, and a verbal encounter ensued for some time, which eventually resulted in Honorable Fraser deciding to walk out of the House of Assembly. As he puts it, he decided to join his other members on the outside, because we were told, of course, during the proceedings on Monday, that the leader of the opposition, Honorable Ralph T. O'Neill, had sent a letter of apology indicating that he would not have been in attendance. He had journeyed to Anegada for Farmers Week activities on that island. So one didn't expect to see the leader of the opposition there. Other members, of course, were also absent, Honorable Foy and Honorable Christopher. No explanations were given in relation to those two. However, one got the sense that Fraser decided he needed to go in there and really state his cause. He is of the opinion that he was muzzled, that he wasn't allowed to state his reason or reasons, irrespective of the concerns raised by the House Speaker. We have a clip that we can listen to, Edrenka, before we go even further, because this is a very interesting development.
It is unfortunate that the House of Assembly, where members have been elected to voice their opinion and share their views, that the Speaker, and it's not just the Speaker, but I heard the Premier saying that I was disrespectful. I mean, come on, being disrespectful for standing up for your rights. The standing orders gives me the right to get up in the House and make an explanation, personal explanation. It doesn't say what I can and cannot say. It simply says it cannot be controversial, or it shall not be the subject of a debate. Don't tell me what to say. I am making an explanation, but fairness doesn't rule in that House of Assembly. And I am prepared to live with it. I am going to live with it, but you're not going to shut me up.
So there you go, Honorable Fraser saying that you're not going to shut him up, and he's demanding that he has an opportunity to state his case in situations like that. What is your take on that, Ed
Well,
Franco?
if I'm not mistaken, from your clip, it seems like Honorable Fraser contradicted himself, or he at least support the Speaker's position, because when he says that he can speak as long as it does not have anything to do with the debate, it's not controversial, it doesn't have anything to do with the debate. If my recollection serves me correctly, I think that's exactly what the Speaker told him, that the path he was going was speaking about the debate. And if he's going to speak about given his explanation, that's fine. But and she read the portion of the standing orders that said he could not speak on the debate until such time that they will be debating. So it seems to me that he's saying the Speaker is right based on what on his comment that he could speak, he can say what he wants in his explanation as long as it's not about the debate, and which it clearly was about the debate. So
and one can easily argue that the point he made about receiving the Standing Finance Committee report on Saturday which basically gives him about 2 days or so to prepare for the budget debate on Monday, was insufficient. And it would have been much acceptable for him to center his argument based on that, and of course any other issue relating to the inadequate time to prepare for the debate. However, he made references to projects such as inadequate funding for major projects in the territory. He was talking about the airport project, the cruise project, the senior citizens home, and so forth. And that really opened up the way for the speaker to step in and basically stop
So
him.
clearly, he was debating before the debate started. And that's what the speaker was objecting to, and she used the standard orders rightfully to point that out to Minister Fraser. But I mean, it's to be a representative of the people, and to be out of the House of Assembly during the budget debate. I'm still waiting to see what purpose that serves, or what the strategy is going forward for the members of the opposition to engage in that kind of behavior, because certainly. You would want to point out, as the opposition, you would want to point out to the people the holes in the budget, how the inadequacies in the various areas of the budget that your group, the opposition, feels does not adequately match the policies that you may have and the vision that you may have for the country. So you by being absent, you don't get an opportunity to point to your vision and your goals for the country, and show how it's better than the government's vision, and how it's not supported in the budget, in the financing of the various projects and programs and services that the government is developing. And if you miss that opportunity, then how are you representing the people? So I'm still waiting to see what the strategy is, and hopefully it'll manifest itself in the days or weeks ahead.
But, at one point we got the impression on Monday through Premier Dr. Orlando Smith that the leader of the opposition, Honorable Ralph O'Neill, would have been in attendance at the sitting on today, Tuesday. And listening to ZBVI radio on Monday evening, I heard the leader of the opposition telling Zan Lewis at ZBVI that he had to search his mind to
decide whether he was coming or not.
Precisely. To maybe decide whether or not he was going to attend. And one wondered what he had to search his mind for. I'm sure that at that point, he too knew that he was not going to attend. And that too raises questions about the strategy, if it was really a clear-cut strategy, or if it was something that they were developing and fine-tuning as they went along. Parenthetically though, on Monday, the House Speaker threatened to call on the Sergeant of Arms to have the 3rd District Representative removed from the House of Assembly during that fracas, if you may, as he more or less went on commenting during his attempts to, or his efforts to leave the House of Assembly. He didn't want to leave quietly, and one really would note that tense moment when the Speaker suggested that she would have to call on the Sergeant of Arms to have him removed.
Well, just general manners, and etiquette says that it's impolite to speak when someone else is speaking. Just as a matter of proper decorum and etiquette in a conversation. And certainly the rules must apply in the House of Assembly, of a House of Assembly anywhere in the world, where people are talking and people are having a discussion, that discussion be conducted in a civil manner. And in my view, when I looked at it and I listened to it, and it seems to me that the discussions were less than civil, particularly in the part of the representative for the 3rd District. And there seems to be a tone of hostility and anger. And I don't know how appropriate, I don't know how appropriate that is for a House of Assembly, and what message that sends to the population, and particularly young people, and what example that sets. So those are all of the things that comes to my mind. The things that come to my mind when looking at that particular situation.
There's another point before we move on. The one school of thought is that the House leader, and maybe the House Speaker, and leader of government business in the House, the Premier, could have allowed the 3rd District representative to carry on with his pre-budget explanation, more or less, and see where he was going with it, hopefully to more or less establish the claim much clearer that he was definitely getting involved in a debate relating to the budget.
Well, you just established it when you're in your mentioning of his talking about the inadequacy of the financing of various projects and things that were in the budget to be debated, and really that's the point. Those are the points that he should have been there to make during the debate.
And he should have stayed focused on those points.
In the interest of the people whom he says he is serving and whom he cares about so much. Those are exactly the things that he was supposed to be
stay on message
to be pointing out to the people that these projects and these programs and these services that this government is talking about doing is not going to work because they are inadequately funded. And then that's what had been the debate. The government would say, no, that's not true. We are funding it this way because for this reason, and then we would be able to decide for ourselves, where the accuracy is.
And as you were saying earlier, the absence means that the territory does not have the opportunity of a rebuttal in the House of Assembly.
Absolutely.
So for the great part of today, there was a one-man fight, pretty much, and the punches were swinging left, right, and center. It
has done an awful disservice to the people of the BVI in terms of representation, yes.
Well, I can tell you that the Minister for Communications and Works, Honorable Mark Vanterpool, definitely did sound, and he was punching like Muhammad Ali in the ring, except that there was no opponents for him to knock out. But the punches were definitely flying left, right, and the center. And he called for a paradigm shift in the territory, saying there is need for improved discussion and debate. This really follows on a similar call for debate and discussion in relation to national matters that we heard on Friday from the Minister for Natural Resources, Deputy Premier, Dr. Kedrick Pickering. So one can definitely conclude that the Communications and Works Minister was definitely on a high note today.
Yeah, well, he did make an impassioned speech, and I thought it was very well laid out, actually. And it would have been interesting to hear what the opposition would have had to say about his statement. But certainly he outlined what he was doing, what the ministry was doing, what the government was doing regarding economic growth and development, infrastructure development.
He stressed the importance of the leadership that is carrying things forward at the moment, Dr. Smith.
He talked. We gave some history of the development of the various budgets over the years and how they had advanced.
And in fact, it's interesting you mentioned that. We're going to hear him on a clip that gives a chronological outline, pretty much, of what that history of budgets has been like in the Virgin Islands. Let's hear it.
Madam Speaker, I went to the books. These books here go way back. These books here, this one here looks a little tattered, a little brownish. But Madam Speaker, I went back to 1971, the revenue of this country. This country operated, Madam Speaker. That's the point I want to make. This country ran itself, operated, survived on $7.6 million. And if you go 10 years later, it was 14.8. And 1990, Madam Speaker, it wasn't much more. 2000, we got up to 204 million. 2010, we are up to 273.6 million. For those who are writing, I may want to give you the 1990 figure of 59.4 million. Jumped to 204 million in 2000, and in 2010, 273.6 million. Madam Speaker, this year, this leader, this premier, this Minister of Finance, despite all the panic and all the issues that were going on, and all the pressures internationally, and all of the attempted blocks in what he wanted to do, all of the attempted attempts to slow the government down and carrying forward its program. Despite all of that, Madam Speaker, the book may show the final book, but it's not the final yet because I believe it's still trying to add up all of the final revenues. We are, Madam Speaker, we have reached the $300 million mark in 2013, and now projecting $300+ million for 2014.
Now, you know, this is the first budget debate that, if you can call it that, that I have really paid so much attention to. And, well, not because I was more interested than other debates, but that the presentation by the government held my attention because it was so focused on what the goals of the government were, the way they were funding the projects, the things that they were doing to achieve those goals, them and the plans, what they had accomplished already, and the plans for the future. And I have long contended, because budget debates used to just annoy me, because the politicians would get up in the House and talk in all kinds of incoherent ways that and unfocused ways about things that had nothing to do with a budget debate or a budget discussion. But I find that this particular budget discussion was filled with relative information to the budget and to the policies, the goals, the vision, the goals of the government, what their accomplishments were over the 2 years that they were there, and what their plans are going forward. And I found that to be really, really interesting. I was really personally pleased by that.
And I'm sure one would appreciate the call for a paradigm shift in terms of moving away from a dependence or reliance on financial services and tourism, and really seeking to find other creative ways of building that third pillar, if you may, or other pillars to help to sustain the local economy, because clearly there is a need for a diversification in terms of the economic development of the territory. And as we listen to the statements by Honorable Vanterpool today, you got a clear sense that government is definitely open to discussions regarding the way forward. Of course, the stage was set there for an open discussion in the House of Assembly, and we didn't have that dialogue.
Yes.
But one would hope that in the future, the days and weeks and months to come, that there will be an opportunity for other people to get involved in the dialogue, whether via the media, such as what we are having here now and so forth, but also other staged platforms for people to air their views, and for those views to be constructive and pointed towards how can we create additional forms of employment. As Vanterpool says, is it possible to create a Silicon Valley on Anegada? Is it possible to have technologically based jobs being introduced to the territory? And what are some of the other areas in terms of infrastructural development that needs specific emphasis and attention at this time in terms of roads? And you have to balance all of this, because there's a need for ensuring that the reserves are also looked after in the event of a rainy day. And I heard Honorable Christian referring to the St. Vincent Dominica St. Lucia scenario as a result of the Christmas Eve floods of 2013. So these are real issues, and one can appreciate that there is a need to continue to fund and to, definitely keep that engine of economic growth running. However, in terms of spurring economic growth, we heard Vanterpool again calling on the local commercial banks, saying, you have a lot of money in there, help the small man and provide more loans to stimulate economic growth in the territory as well.
Yeah, and that it would have been a good opportunity. And I don't know if the Deputy Premier addressed this, because he was speaking while I was on the way to the show. But and I think he might be still speaking or finished speaking as we were on the show. And I don't know if he addressed this, but it would have been a perfect opportunity for the opposition to point out perhaps the slow rate in which a third economic pillar is being developed, given all of the attention all the negative attention that's being paid to financial services and the slowing growth rate of the tourism sector, and certainly that would have been an opportunity for them to point out the rate of aggressiveness in developing a third economic pillar, as the Deputy Premier had promised some months ago with the fisheries.
Yes.
And I would have been interested to hear how that is moving forward, because that's one of that area is the one area I think that if you have a chance to develop a third economic pillar, that might be the area to do so. And I know some strides have been made in the fisheries complex. There's a plan to build another fisheries on Anegada, which is all part of that development program. How fast can we do that? How fast is it being done? Will it be done in time in the event that we have a meltdown in the financial services, for example?
That's
so those
right.
were some of the issues that perhaps the opposition could have shed some light on and debate.
Yes.
And put pressure on the government to advance that cause, because that is a vital national security interest that they would have been discussing.
Agreed. And the issue of fishing, of course, goes in tandem with agriculture. So agriculture and fishery is definitely a wonderful combination for building or constructing a third pillar. And we heard last year and coming into this year the push towards the greenhouse project in the Paraquita Bay. We heard about getting more young people involved in farming at the 2014 Farmers Week opening ceremony on Friday, February 7. And we heard the Minister for Natural Resources indicating that there have been some setbacks with the greenhouse project. He did say, however, that government is committed to ensuring that the project goes on, adding that the investment cannot go to waste. Remember last year that he said government was seeking proposals from private investors and so forth, local and outside, to get involved in the greenhouse project. However, that has not materialized as yet, and definitely there are some issues there to consider. But we do recall that this project started since 2009, so we should have been producing vegetables and so forth already.
Well, absolutely. And again, I have to say this was another opportunity for the opposition to point out whether or not lip service is continually being paid to agricultural development, or the government had some real funding and some real plans to actually increase food production in the territory. Because, over the years, Sean, everyone has been talking about agriculture and developing agriculture and what they're going to do for agriculture. But then term after, 4-year term after 4-year term, administration after administration, agriculture food production seems to remain the same. I have to admit that I've been going to the supermarkets and been able to buy more and more local cucumbers,
local produce,
more local produce, generally speaking. And so there might be a situation where agriculture, food production is increasing, but how fast and how much is it really viable? Is the funding, the technical, is the funding, the technical expertise, and the plans, the marketing strategies, are these things the infrastructure, are these things being put in place according to the government's budget in order to facilitate the food production? That would be another issue that the opposition could have tackled in the budget debate. So we missed out on a tremendous amount, I think, by the opposition being absent in this debate.
Well, I heard from one local supermarket operator that they spend in excess of $1 million annually to pay local farmers for locally produced goods, and that was definitely welcoming news. And I did also have a chat with two farmers, the champion farmer for 2014, Mr. Aaron Hill, and his counterpart, brother by the name of Maken. And they did say that farming for them is definitely challenging at times, but it does have its rewards. And another farmer told me that the issue he has is really with price. In fact, the issues are price and access to lands. So those are two critical areas.
And water.
Well, water is always an issue. And we know that last
year's
champion farmer, Moveen Foy, has always been making that plea for the availability of water to be constant.
But by the way, Sean,
Yes.
then don't forget that thought. It'd be remiss of me if I don't not celebrate, but make mention of the anniversary of the Bywater contract. It'll be 4 years old on February the 18th. That's next week.
Yes.
And right now, up to now, we haven't gotten a teardrop of water. So I just have to mention that because that's my
4 years and still no water being produced.
that's my pet beef.
What is the problem there? What are some of
Yes.
these setbacks? And again, the legislators owe us a great deal of explanation, both on the opposition side, who obviously penned that agreement, and those who are now in government. And we heard Honorable Vanterpool again, really airing his frustration with that project.
Yes.
But it's definitely time for the water to start flowing through the pipes.
Yes.
And there seems to be some great things happening on Anegada in terms of agriculture. We're hearing that a white sheep program will be started there very soon, and we definitely can look forward to that. And of course, stay tuned for some details in the news as well. But before we go, Edrenka, we touched on financial services earlier on, and we observed an article coming out from it was originally printed in the French newspaper Le Monde by a French journalist, Anne Michel. She apparently visited the Virgin Islands recently, and she wrote this article, or at least it was printed on January 24th, 2014. And she, in her article, captures the students at the Elmo Stout High School who are in the financial services class being tutored by Mrs. Colleen Scatliff Edwards. But the article, the writer makes some damning statements. She says, in fact, the article is titled "British Virgin Islands Forbidden City," and one really does think that one can argue, one can agree that some of these headlines are quite suggestive, and in some ways are unfair, because I can't think of any place in the Virgin Islands that is a forbidden place. I've been to many places across the world, and there are some areas, the moment you step in that vicinity or environment, you get chills. There is no such place here in the Virgin Islands. But she's really referring to financial services.
Well, I want to put the financial services, France, actually, I want to put France in its proper context, in its proper perspective. The whole idea, the whole French attack on the BVI financial service in the context of its economic philosophy.
Yes.
France, as you know, the French government is a socialist government.
Yes.
And the nature of socialism is as close to communism as you can get before it's actual communism, where they believe in collective ownership or state ownership of the means of production of wealth. So any state that is a capital state that believe in individual ownership of the means of production of wealth, of goods and services, that's sort of like a hostility set up between those two economic philosophies.
Yes, because they basically try to regulate the private sector in every way.
And in every way.
Yes.
So is in the socialist mind, the capitalist is trying to protect its money from getting to the masses of the people.
Yes.
Right? And the capitalist,
which sounds fair.
Right. In the capitalist mind, they are working hard for their money, and they need to be able to spend it how they want.
And that too is fair.
Right. So those are the two philosophical arguments.
Yes.
So we need to expect that kind of behavior from any socialist state, of which Hollande is a socialist president, and the government is a socialist government. So, I think the attention is so much attention is being given to that because, of course, France is a European power, and that's another interesting situation where you have French and the United States. French is a socialist, have a socialist government. Obama is a capitalist president, but they still have this close bond, whereas Cuba it's got a problem. You know what I'm saying? So that's a hypocrisy in the global political configuration, but that's a different story.
Oh yes, because we're gonna go all the way back to colonialism if we follow that thread.
That's a different story.
But at least one particular quote that we can look at coming from the article, it says, quote, "It is no mystery that the BVI stands near the top of the list of the world's most secretive tax havens." It recently failed the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the OECD, is OECD's test for assessing a country's international cooperation in the fight against tax fraud and tax evasion. And we do recall hearing from the local authorities that this was really more of an administrative issue, and it's not necessarily one that really speaks of avoiding taxes or what have you, or hiding any information. But a lot of this is really being played upon, because the journalist goes on to say that for some time the territory's business and political stalwarts have seen themselves under siege from the OECD. And here again, pretty much all of the Eastern Caribbean countries, and pretty much across the Caribbean, all countries that were once vibrant financial services jurisdictions were under siege at some point. However, Delaware has never been under siege.
Right.
The UK,
Switzerland has never been under siege. The UK hasn't been under siege.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you wonder what is really the agenda.
It's a double standard. It's a double standard.
Well, I think the BVI, Sowande Uhuru, you should know Sowande very well. He offered some comments on that very article, because it is an online article, and it can be accessed at www.icij.org/offshore/British Virgin Islands Forbidden City. You may recall that acronym, ICIJ, the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists. But Sowande says, I have a hard time believing that the Virgin Islands is robbing the poor of Africa, because the article does make that assertion at some point. He says, or any other country for that matter. He says, perhaps you need to research the IMF and the World Bank. He goes on to say their structural adjustment programs did a pretty solid job of robbing the poor countries of the world. I remember one philosopher saying that the IMF in particular is responsible for debt, destruction, devaluation, and he added the DEATHS debts to that as well, because of the stress involved in living in countries where the IMF has imposed itself on the governments to introduce these very strict measures. But here we are. Some very interesting developments.
Hypocrisy in the highest, and there was a documentary years ago during the period when Michael Manley was in power in Jamaica, and how the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank really killed the Jamaican economy, and sort of like subversively deposed Michael Manley. But you really got to study history.
Oh yes, because we know how Haiti was orchestrated, how Haiti's demise was orchestrated since 1804.
We really have to study history. We really have to study history, the history of the European powers and the colonialists, and what and so that we can understand what they're trying to attempt to do now. But we need to have this discussion. I think it's an interesting discussion that we need to have. Perhaps one day we'll sit down and go through that whole discussion, Sean. But thank you very much for...
Pleasure's mine.
Some great stories. We're looking forward to see more details, hearing more details about the stories. And of course, I'm certain that over the next several days, we'll hear a lot of talk in the news about the budget debates and all the antics.
And we're looking forward to the national debates as well.
Surrounding, and yes, and there's some
national debate on agriculture involving youth. So many.
National debate for jobs, and provision of jobs, and meeting and having BVI Islanders meet the job market. I don't know so much what national debate needs to happen on that particular issue. I think we just need to prepare our kids to take the jobs and have the Labor Department support them getting preference to the jobs. But
let the debates begin.
Thanks a lot, Sean. So it was a real great segment. I appreciate that.
Spotlight is brought to you by the National Bank of the Virgin Islands, the BVI Tourist Board, and CCT Global Communications.